voices and airline ticket to romantic places, and still my heart has wings. These foolish things remind me of you. A tinkling piano in the next apartment, those stumbling words that told you what my heart meant, a fairgrounds paint.
To the Big Three Conference in the Crimea went not only the leaders of the three great Allied powers, but also the hopes and faith of all men who look to a future free from war. A ship carrying members of the British delegation approaches the Crimea. Within sight of Sebastopol Harbour, a Russian pilot takes over on the bridge. Mr. Roosevelt and Mr. Churchill, old acquaintances of the Russian leaders, renew the friendship forged at Tirana. The Levadia Palace, however brilliant its functions in Imperial Russia, never housed so memorable a meeting as this. The decisions reached here have to square up to the bedrock aspirations of the people of the United Nations and prove worthy of their cause. The three great leaders and their staffs of military and political advisors face the inevitable battery of cameras. Through 5.5 years of war, we have long awaited this moment of the Churchill-Roosevelt-Stalin meeting, the Grand Alliance. At this point in our history, we know that Germany is to go into a straitjacket of Allied-imposed discipline. The blueprint of its future has been drawn, signed and sealed. Let a quotation from the communique issued from Yalta speak for us all. It is our inflexible purpose to destroy German militarism and Nazism and ensure that Germany will never again be able to disturb the peace of the world.
Yalta, January 1945. Roosevelt, Stalin, and me. Could be the title of my next book, couldn't it? Three grandees, but it's not as grand as it seems. We may be the leaders of the three greatest nations on earth, but when it comes down to it, we are three old men with old men's problems. But it is down to us, don't you see? Down to us to make a good fist of it. Or at least a better fist than after the first one. The war to end all wars. Only it wasn't, as we now know. But I could have told them that long before. I did tell them. Fortunately, some listened. Dowding, for example. The bomber will always get through. But it didn't. Because we had radar. We were at least ready for them. Our boys in the air. Never in the history of these islands has so much been owed by so many to so few, etc., etc. There'd have been fewer if I hadn't pushed for the development of radar. Watson Watt, Skip Wilkins, Tappy Bowen, and all the boys over at Bordsey. Didn't think they'd make it on time. It was touch and go. But they did. And now here we are, 5 years later. The war hadn't quite ended, but we knew that the Nazis were finished. It was all over bar the shouting in Europe. And we'd stood firm. Little England, bastion. We'd stood firm and we'd triumphed. With a little help from our friends, of course.
Churchill knew, I knew that without us it would have been a different story. Britain was on its knees. Well, bravado can only stretch so far. But Congress was so reluctant to pitch in. Yes, I admit that the American people can be a little isolationist, but we are democratic. Our Constitution of 1787 is not a perfect instrument. It is not perfect yet, but it does provide a solid base upon which all manner of men of all races, colors, and creeds can build our solid structure of democracy. But Pearl Harbor changed all that. We have learned that we cannot live alone at peace, that our well-being depends upon the well-being of others. We have learned that we have to live as men and not ostriches. We have learned a simple truth, that the only way to have a friend is to be one.
We needed them. Of course we did. Why do you think I spent so long trying to get them to join us? And it was radar that swung it, or the secrets of the magnetron anyway. But it still meant we suffered. 5 years of pain and bloodshed on all sides. And the second war in 20 years. Up to us now to make sure there isn't a third.
Stalin was an ally, so he had to be involved. And anyway, the ordinary Russian people had paid with their lives 1,000 times over. And we needed him to help us with the Japs. But we didn't trust him. Well, after all, he's a Marxist, running a Marxist state. Different ideals, different values.
The fire of war has burnt up the misunderstandings of the past. We feel that in Marshal Stalin we have a friend who we can trust, and I hope he will continue to feel the same way about us. I pray he may live to see his beloved Russia not only glorious in war, but happy in peace.
Yeah, right. Churchill trusted Stalin so much, he suggested we first meet in Malta before going to the altar for pre-discussions. Stalin got wind of it, though. He sent a telegram. I said Yalta, not Malta.
The only way to maintain peace is to create a robust organization of nations, a United Nations, if you will, to come together for the good of the whole. But I do not see any other way of realizing our hopes for a world organization in 5 or 6 days. Oh, even the Almighty took 7.
We've been friends for a long time. I agree.
No more letters falter from Malta to Yalta. Let nobody alter.
Stalin saw these men as weak. He knew what he wanted and was determined to get it. He knew Roosevelt wasn't well. And Churchill, the war had taken its toll. He looked older, very tired.
I had a touch of cold at temperature. Nothing more. But I bought an adequate supply of whiskey to see me through. As for Yalta, a bleak spot in the vast bleakness of Crimea, we could not have found a worse place for a meeting if we had done 10 years of research. But it was Roosevelt I was worried about.
Roosevelt. Everyone knew he wasn't well. Something terminal. He found our Crimean climate quite challenging. But I think that was all part of Stalin's plan.
Well, yes, I am tired. So would you be if you'd spent the last 5 years pushing Churchill uphill in a wheelbarrow.
Churchill. He drank a lot of whiskey and would not stay on the point. Everyone knew he was afraid of the coming elections in his country. Stalin didn't know why he didn't just rig them in his favor. Churchill and Roosevelt, they were too soft. We knew we wanted territory, and that's what we set out to achieve. Whoever occupies a territory can impose his own social system as far as the army can reach. It cannot be otherwise.
Keep right on to the end of the road. Keep right on to the end.
Comrade Stalin got a little tired of Churchill's singing.
Tell your chief that singing is Churchill's secret weapon.
Marshal Stalin's belief was this: wartime expenditures in blood and treasure should determine the victor's rewards. We do not wish to restore the balance of power in Europe, but rather dominate it and leave the rest to fall apart.
Poland is important to us. She fought beside us and suffered great loss. We fought for her freedom in war. We shall fight for her freedom in peace.
We will have Poland, there is no question of this.
All my public life, I have worked for a strong France, and I never lost faith in her destiny, even in the darkest hours. I will not lose faith now.
We have no respect for France, a faltering coward of a nation. If Churchill wants territory for France, he will have to carve it from his own portion.
We want security in the world, and we don't want the spread of communism, period. So we need a collective security organization to deter and punish aggression.
Comrade Stalin had spies everywhere, so we knew what the British and Americans wanted almost before they did. We let the British have Greece, but in exchange got a puppet government placed in Poland. We occupied Romania and East German territory and obtained $10 million German reparations in the way of industrial goods, and a foothold in Berlin, which will soon be fully ours.
The purpose of the United Nations is to make sure that the force of right is protected by the right of force. Democracy is the current suspicion that more than half the people are right more than half the time. Democracy is a letter to the editor, the score at the beginning of the ninth, or the mustard on your hot dog, or the cream on your ration coffee.
Which way shall we turn to save our lives and the future of the world? It does not matter much to old people, they're going soon anyway. But I find it poignant to look at youth and wonder what it would be like for them if God wearied of mankind. There is time and hope if we combine patience and courage. Never flinch, never waver, never despair.
By the time of the Potsdam Conference on the 17th July, Roosevelt was dead, replaced by Harry Truman, a Thai salesman and very inexperienced in politics. And Churchill was out of office, replaced by Clement Attlee.
A sheep in sheep's clothing, a modest man with much to be modest about.
Neither very effective, neither a challenge to our aims. If they wanted our cooperation to fight the Japanese, they would have to give us everything we wanted. But then, on the 6th of August, little boy spoke, and the whole world changed forever.
They reached backward beyond the frontiers of Western civilization to the concepts of war which were once familiar to the Asiatic hordes. They failed to take into account the ultimate responsibility of men for one another. They imply the admission that man not only can be, but is his own worst and most terrible enemy. Power into will, will into appetite, and appetite a universal wolf, so doubly seconded with will and power, must make perforce a universal prey, and last, eat up himself.
The human animal and his emotions change not much from age to age, but he must change now, or face absolute and complete destruction. And perhaps an insect age or an atmosphere-less planet will succeed him.
The new terror brings a certain element of equality and annihilation. Strange as it may seem, it is the universality of potential destruction, and I think we may look with hope and even confidence.
In the simplest of terms, what we are doing in Korea is this. We are trying to prevent a third world war.
Come on, Pops.
What time do you call this? We've been open an hour already.
Very funny. After the morning I've had, I can tell you. He only wanted to build a shelter straight away.
A shelter? Who?
Morris, it's been all over the news, have you not heard?
It seems the Americans are about to get their asses kicked in Korea.
Pops.
Well, I'm too busy to listen to the news. I've got a pub to clean.
The Russians are coming, I told you years ago. War to end all wars, my arse.
Language, Pops, and sit down, you're making the place look untidy.
The Russians are coming. Ban the barricades, build the shelters.
Anything to do with Rory gets so upset. Can you get him a tonic when that should help?
I'd rather have a Guinness.
You'll have a tonic and like it.
And a port and lemon for you too, Connie.
Oh, don't mind if I do the morning I've had. Oh, and get one for yourself, Gwen.
Oh, well,
Go on, must be time for a break. And you'll be keeping customers happy.
well, don't mind if I do. So what's all this about shelters?
The Russians are coming. Build the barricades. Man the barricades.
What's he on about?
I don't think it's anything to worry about just yet. It's just the government being cautious, that's all. There's some problem in Korea.
MacArthur's about to advance into the Eula River. The commies are coming.
I knew something like this would happen if they got rid of Mr. Churchill. They should never have got rid of Mr. Churchill.
Well, it was getting a bit doddery, I think, and well, he wanted to keep it all going. This is the Americans, after all.
It is still all going, you stupid woman, in Korea. The Russians and the Chinese are supporting the North, and the Americans are supporting the South. It'll be a bloodbath if it's not World War III, you mark my words. We're all off to hell in a handcart.
Language, Pops, I can still put you in a home.
Doddery? At least he wasn't in a wheelchair like that Roosevelt chap.
Best give somebody else a shot at it.
Look where it's landed us.
Yeah, where has it landed us?
The Ruskies are coming.
Oh,
Protect and survive.
What?
That's the new government booklet. Civil Defence Information Handbook number 10, advising the household on protection against nuclear attack. And I intend to do just that.
And a very good morning to you too, Morris.
Can't you give it a rest now, Morris? I've been having this all morning, Gwen.
The Russians are coming. Where's me pint?
Yes, all right.
Yeah, he's right. For once your father's right on both counts, Corinne.
So what's all this about then, Morris?
It's the new government information. And if it's from the government, it must be right.
Tell that to all our boys that didn't come home.
Ah, that was different. That was military. Brass-head buffoons.
War to end all wars, my arse.
Oh my shit. Right.
But this is military too.
Oh, military will start it, no doubt about that. But the government has pledged to protect its citizens if we all follow the guidelines.
You're not suggesting there might be another war, are you, Morris? I mean, haven't we got enough to tend with? We're still on rationing, for goodness sake. And I didn't think there was anyone left to fight. I mean, we beat the Japs and the Nazis, and surely Korea's too far away for us to worry about.
Watch out for the Ruskies.
And I thought they were our allies. Mr. Churchill always spoke very highly of them.
Well, not anymore. Don't you ever listen to the wireless, Gwendolyn? Korea's on the brink as Berlin's being carved up.
I don't have the time.
My mind, Mr. Churchill was cruelly deceived. You can't trust a communist any more than you can throw them. They moved into Poland and Romania and East Germany. It's like your Mr. Churchill said, an iron curtain has come down over Europe.
Did he say that?
Yes, he did. And that means the gloves are off. And if the gloves are off, we're on the front line. And that means every one of us.
Man the barricades.
I wouldn't bank on it if I were you, Morris. I think you're too old to fight now.
Not me, us. East Anglia, Suffolk.
What are you talking about?
Well, it's obvious. All our bases here, aren't they? Where do you think they're going to launch their bombs from?
What bombs?
The nuclear bombs, of course.
Like Hiroshima. He means like Hiroshima.
They wouldn't do that again, would they?
Yes, they would. And we'd be the first to get hit.
The Russians are coming, which is more than you said for my pint.
Men. It's all men, Gwen. If it was up to us women, we'd all sit down and discuss it over a nice cup of tea.
Well, it's not up to you, is it? That's why we must all read the information and follow the guidelines.
Have you got any work to do, Miss Stevens? I won't pay you to stand around and fraternise with the customers, you know.
Well, we're not exactly rushed off our feet, and I have done the glasses.
What about the lunch rolls?
We're out of cheese.
Well, think of an alternative.
I could do egg and cress.
Egg and cress? What do you think this is, the Ritz?
Just egg then. What do you think, Morris? Fancy a nice egg roll?
Made by your fair hands, Gwendolyn, it would taste divine.
Cheers. What's all this then, Morris?
Oh.
No, latest government information. Keep us safe in the event of nuclear fallout.
Morris seems to think we'll be on the front line.
Oh no, I think we're too rural to bother with. If there was a nuclear strike, they'd target the big towns, surely, you know, Norwich, Cambridge.
They could have it switch any time.
Rose!
Going.
You listen to this. If nuclear weapons are used on large scale, those living in rural areas will be at greater risk than those living in towns. It's the radioactive dust falling where the wind blows that will bring the greatest danger of all. No part of the United Kingdom can be considered safe from both the direct effects of the weapons and the resultant fallout.
Blimey.
Everywhere within a certain distance of a nuclear explosion would be totally destroyed. Even people living outside the area will be at risk from the heat and blast and fallout.
So the end of the world as we know it?
What? Not if we follow government guidelines.
Oh. And what are the government
Oh,
guidelines?
don't ask Carl.
You may stick your head in the sand, Constance, but I, for one, do not intend to. There's things that can be done.
Like what, Morris?
Like planning a fallout room or inner refuge.
Yeah, but that won't help if you take a direct hit, will it?
Well, no, but that's not likely where we are, rural, not in a city. We're most likely to get the effects of the heat and the dust and the fallout.
Oh, hence the fallout room.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, and what are the guidelines on that?
Well, it says because of fallout, you and your family may need to live in it for 24 days after an attack.
God, it's going to get a bit ripe, isn't it?
Well, that's a small price to pay to survive, I think. Anyway, you find a room that's furthest from the roof and the outside walls, a cellar or basement's ideal, of course. But any room will need windows blocked and extra layers on the walls to protect against radiation, like doors or books.
Books? Honestly, as if a few books are going to do it. Have you not seen the film of those poor people in Hiroshima? Don't think any amount of books would help there.
Yeah, and what if you don't have a cellar?
You find an inner room that's suitable, of course.
Yeah. What if you live in a caravan?
Yeah.
Don't see any amount of books giving that much protection.
They've thought of that. It says here, if you live in a caravan or other similar accommodation offers very little protection against radiation, your local authority will be able to advise you on what to do.
And where do you think you're going, young lady?
Out.
Out. Not dressed like that, you're not.
I'm 16. I can dress how I like.
No, you bloody can't, not while I'm in charge.
Mum would have let me.
I doubt that very much. Anyway, she's not here, and I am.
Yeah, more's the pity.
What did you say?
What's wrong with it?
What's wrong with it? You look like a tart from a 1930s Berlin nightclub. That's what's wrong with it.
Well, that's because you're old and decrepit and don't know the latest thing about fashion. What do you think, Auntie Connie?
I think she looks lovely, Carl.
Lovely. What's it meant to be? A fancy dress party?
I'm a Judy.
A what?
A teddy girl.
Oh, God, a teddy girl. Now I have heard everything. Ah, Martin, what do you think of our teddy girl?
Oh, hello, Martin. Love, they let you out early.
Hello, Betty.
Martin.
You look nice.
Oh, thanks.
I said, hello, Martin. Did they let you out early?
No, just an early lunch.
Talk to myself sometimes. So, hello to Grandad at least.
Hello, Gramps.
I'll have another pint.
Yeah, right. I'll see you later.
Over my dead body.
All right, look. You might be past it, but I am not. This is the latest fashion in London.
Isn't that my old old jacket?
Don't think so.
And my trousers. And that's one of Pop's old caps.
Oh, don't worry about that, he won't miss it. I think he looks rather smart.
Smart. She looks like she should be down the old Kent Road with a rag and bone horse.
And what would you know? You are not exactly the latest follower of fashion.
That I might not be, but what I do know is you're not going out dressed like that.
Well, you can't tell me what to do. You're not my real dad.
No, I'm not your real dad. Your real dad buggered off, so I'm the best you've got.
He didn't bugger off. He was killed in the war.
He buggered off, trust me. And looking at you now, I'm not surprised.
Oh, I'm going. I don't care what you say.
You go, and you're on your own. Don't call me if you get into trouble.
Oh, I'm not on my own. Coming, Martin.
Come on.
Martin! Don't encourage her.
Martin, you coming or what?
I'm coming. Sorry, Mr. Harrison.
Yeah.
Betty!
I'll be back at 10.
The front door will be locked and bolted.
Oh, no, it won't. It's a pub, and you're open till 10:30.
I forbid it.
Yeah? You and whose army? Come on, Martin.
Top up, anyone?
No thanks, I seem to have lost the taste for it. You come in, Pops.
Oh, don't worry about him. He's fallen asleep. I'll get Carl to walk him back later.
What about you, Morris? You coming?
No, I think I'll just stay here and finish my pint, thank you.
Oh, thank God for that. Oh, it was very kind of my brother-in-law to move in and help out when my husband died, but if I have to listen to any more about padding out you're in a refuge, I think I'll scream.
I wouldn't mind mine a refuge padded out sometime.
Oh, be careful what you wish for.
I shouldn't worry about Morris. I think he's harmless enough.
No, not Morris. Although you would be doing me a favour. No, it's him over there. That's the third time I've seen him in here and he's not local.
Bird watching, he says.
Oh, you've spoken then. It will take our Tate over a nightcap, eh?
Stop it! He's staying in Mrs. Brightwell's B&B.
Good luck with that one. God dear. Where's he from?
He didn't say, but he sounds quite posh.
Not a man from the ministry?
I don't think so. Been a lot of those in here over the war, but it seems to have all gone quiet on the Nest now.
Oh, Morris was saying that they're looking for labourers on the Nest.
First I've heard of it.
I was thinking of sending our Martin up there.
I thought he was happy at the factory.
Well, factory work's not really up his street. He's brighter than that. I've always said so. He just didn't do very well at school, that's all.
But labouring's not far short of factory work, and he might get put up to supervisor one day.
Yes, but if he's up on the Nest and the boffies come back, well, then there's possibilities, that's all I'm saying. And I'd keep an eye on that one if I were you.
There is no better place to pick up information than a quiet country pub. There are no better people to pick it up from than a couple of country women. Those all careless talk cost lives in the last war, wasn't it? But the war's over now, isn't it? Well, as far as they're concerned. Truck and Pincher at your command, ex-army, ordnance expert, bombs, missiles, etc., etc. Specialist subject now, the Cold War. I work for the Express as an investigative reporter. Now, during the Second World War, I had dealings with weapons. So did my father, he was a military man. And I became very interested in actual weapons, not just the weapons themselves, you understand, but the wheeling and dealing that went with them. There was a lot of lying going on, I knew that, but there was a lot of spying too. I did a fair amount of digging myself. rockets, RDX, that's Research Department Explosives to you lot. Yes, V1 rockets, V2 rockets, I knew it all. There was nothing I didn't know. My motto was, who knows wins, get it? No, perhaps not. Anyway, I was with a friend of mine at the time, Arthur Christensen, who happened to be the editor of the Express. He was always picking my brains, he was trying to find out what I knew. And then, in August 1945, the bomb came down and nobody knew a damn thing, not even me. Whereas it was the bombs changed the world, we all know that. Things would never be the same again. Yes, warfare was changed forever.
Can I get you anything at all?
I'll have a cup of tea if you don't mind.
Cup of tea?
Yes, I've already had a pint today. I don't like drinking during the day. Keep a clear head. Besides, the night is the time for drinking, if you know what I mean.
So, what sort of work do you do?
Me? This and that. Administration mainly. My father would call it bean counting.
Government, I bet. We had a lot of those in here over the war.
Yes. Right. Well, as I say, not very interesting department, bean counting really.
And are you here for work or pleasure?
I know. That depends on whom I meet. Mr. Ernest Hill, pleased to meet you.
Ah, Miss Stevens, Gwendolyn Stevens. You can call me Gwen.
Gwen, Miss Stevens. My pleasure, anyway. Yes. I don't mean to sound overpowering, but I was listening to your conversation. I thought we'd done with the war. I was in communications during the last one.
Oh, really?
Yes, I thought we'd done with it all, but it looks like it might be rearing its head again.
Well, I know Morris thinks we ought to be ready, but I think one of those atom bomb things was quite enough. Throw any more about, and there won't be anything left now, will there?
That's true.
I'll go and get your tea.
Thanks very much. Actually, my name is Harry. That's my first name, but when I joined the Express, the editor called me into the office. He says, "Now, son," he says, "what are we going to call you? They're a pretentious lot round here. What's your middle name?" And when I said Chapman, he smirked, and the name stuck. Anyway, us defence correspondents were at Farnborough one day, and after the meeting, we were on this bus towards the main gate. Sitting opposite me was this little old man in a bowler hat and a pinstripe suit and a briefcase. So he suddenly turns to me and he says, "Are you Chapman Pinch by any chance?" I said, "Yes." He said, "I just read your book. Reading Farm Animals, wonderful. It taught me so much. I'm a civil servant, but I'm a farmer at the weekend. I've got a herd of red polled cattle. Would you like to see them?" This conversation. Anyway, it turns out that this Fred Brundrett was the deputy, soon to be head scientist of the Ministry of Defence. And we became such pals. We'd regularly have lunch together, and he became a main source of links to me. There was nothing I didn't know. He treated me like another member of his department. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you're only as good as your next story, and that is why I am here. Because here is where the next front line is going to be. Oh yes, it all happens round here, you know, and I intend to find out what in good old Dozy East Anglia. Well, can always keep you in the dark, don't they, huh? Yes, they do. Well, the British public have a right to know. And I'm going to find out. So, Chapman Pincher is on the case.
The Eastern world, it is exploding, violence flaring, bullets loading. You're old enough to kill, but not for voting. You don't believe in war, But what's that gun you're toting? And even the Jordan River has bodies floating. But you tell me over and over and over again, my friend, you don't believe we're on the eve of destruction. Don't you understand what I'm trying to say? Can't you feel the fears I'm feeling today? If the button is pushed, there's no running away. There'll be no one to save with the world in a grave. Take a look around you, boy. It's bound to scare you, boy. And you tell me over and over and over again, my friend, you don't believe we're on the eve of destruction.
We must not forget that by creating a US atomic base in East Anglia, we have made ourselves the target, perhaps even the bullseye, of a Russian attack.
I approved 89 nukes for East Anglia under a war plan called Half Moon. It was assumed that war would start with conventional weapons in Germany, but with USSR, the stronger force on the ground, the US troops would gradually begin to withdraw after 15 days of fighting. The US would then launch a counterattack from its bases in Britain using nukes to bomb 70 Russian cities simultaneously. The USSR would retaliate and wipe out East Anglia completely. But we would have got in the first strike. US troops thereafter would resort to our bases in Egypt, Iceland, Greenland, and Alaska.
We at Jigsaw, Joint Inter-Services Group for the Study of All-Out War. We knew it was pretty obvious that if the deterrent failed, the nation-state would pass beyond hope of revival and reach a state of total breakdown.
Quick Readiness Alert, QRA, was practiced on all air bases. In less than 15 minutes, the Vulcan bomber could be scrambled, carrying the destructive power of all the bombs dropped on Germany.
In the event of war, the use of these bases in an emergency would be a matter of a joint decision between His Majesty's government and the administration of the USA.
Now, I'm not sure how much freedom of action we had. I think in the event it would have been quite a lot. I never allowed anything to be put in writing. There was an understanding. Thor required 2 keys for its deployment, each held by each country. It was assumed that we would ask for cooperation. I think in the event we knew that the decision may have to be made too quickly for that to be a practical option.
Yeah, we wanted to work with the Americans, of course. After all, Churchill had staked a great deal on the special relationship. But it soon became quite clear that although the Americans were happy to have the weapons over here, they did not want to share the expertise. No, if we were going to be part of the race, we'd have to pitch in on our own merits. It wasn't a huge problem. We'd got the boffins and we'd done the groundwork on radar, which we sold to our American cousins for a mess of pottage, I might add. But there, we are on our own, aren't we? And the race is on. So, where's the war going to take place, eh? Well, it's obvious, the nest. After all, it's been the main testing point for the munitions to parachutes since World War I. Nobody's admitting anything, but it's only a matter of time.
Hardly anyone died in the Cold War, but we lived on a daily basis with the fear that everyone could. We did tests of fallout across Norwich. It made for grim reading.
We knew there would be little hope for the civilian population. We estimated 33 million would be killed.
There were 110 bunkers across East Anglia, manned by volunteers from the Royal Observer Corps, who would feed data to a central base.
There was no defense. It would have been total annihilation.
From Stettin in the Baltic to Trieste in the Adriatic, an iron curtain has descended across the continent. Behind that line lie all the capitals of the ancient states of Central and Eastern Europe. Warsaw, Berlin, Prague, Vienna, Budapest, Belgrade, Bucharest, and Sofia. All these famous cities and the populations around them lie in what I must call the Soviet sphere. And all are subject in one form or another, not only to Soviet influence, but to a very high and in some cases increasing measure of control from Khrushchev's Moscow.
Berlin is the Achilles heel of the West. The American foot in Europe with a sore blister on it. Berlin is the testicles of the West. Whenever I want to make the West scream, I squeeze on Berlin.
Come on, put your back into it.
Morning, young lady. Ooh, you don't look very happy.
Just ignore her. She's sulking because she can't get her own way.
Not a teddy girl today, then.
That's most of the problem. What you have, Pops?
A drink would be nice.
I'll ignore him too. I think he got out of bed the wrong side this morning as well.
The Russians are carried. I warned you. They're over the channel before you can say Cold War.
He's been watching old film footage of the old Berlin airlift again.
Yes. They get food and they lost the war. We won the war and we get rationing.
I do see his point.
Yes.
Well, you can't have people suffering, can you?
Yeah, I told you.
I mean, you know, these people were in the western zones.
Yes, they'll be over the channel before you can see it.
Russians were determined to starve them into joining the East.
You can't trust those Russians. They'll be over the channel before you can say Cold War.
Oh, I'll have a G&T if you don't mind, Gwen. After the morning I've had, I think I've deserved it. He's not the only one driving me round our bed.
What's Morris done now?
He's only gone and taken all the doors off.
Now what?
It's this protect and survive thing.
Yes.
He says we need an inner refuge and he's gone and taken all the doors off and now I can't get in my front room.
Yeah, we'll all be dead anyway when the bombs come.
My best China's in that front room. Morris says there's more important things. My mum gave me that china on our wedding day. Handed down from her mother and her mother before her.
Protect and survive, my arse. And as for your China, my girl, that's going back to its maker along with the rest of us.
So what's brought all this on?
Well, we went to see a film, but it's supposed to be my birthday treat.
What did you see?
A Flare in the Sun, Montgomery Cliff, and Elizabeth Taylor. Lovely.
I love Elizabeth Taylor.
Yeah, but before the main feature, there was this government film about what to do in the event of a nuclear strike. Now it's all hands on deck.
You don't think Russia would start another war, not over Berlin?
I don't know. What do you think, Betty? He won't have one. Sorry, love?
A jukebox. It's the thing to have, and he won't have one.
Carl says there's no call for it in a pub like ours.
Yes, and Carl is stuck in the 1820s.
Well, who's your favourite singer then, Betty? Mine's Perry Como or Frank Sinatra. Fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars.
You may get your wish sooner than you think.
Bill Haley.
Who?
Bill Haley and the Comets? Or Chuck Berry, Johnny Be Good. We're back Louisiana to New Orleans. We're back up in the woods among the evergreens. There was a log cabin made of myrtle wood. Well, lived a country boy named Johnny Be Good. Oh.
Haven't you got any work to do?
Oh, she's doing no harm, Carl.
She's doing no good neither. I told her mother I'd look after her, but she has to earn her keep. Marty, can't you take her in hand?
Oh, Carl, you've made it blush.
I'm going for my break. Coming, Martin?
Break! You haven't done anything yet!
Yeah, sure.
Don't be long!
What does a man have to do to get a drink round here? My throat's as dry as a Sahara.
Sorry, Pops, Gwen.
Yeah, it's all right, I'm going.
I don't know. You think she'd be grateful? Roof over her head, food in her belly, steady job. Now she's left school, but oh no, it's all Teddy this and Bopper that. I didn't have to take her on, you know.
She misses her mum.
I blame the Yanks from the base.
What base?
Bentwaters. They're all in Ipswich every time she goes in.
Oh, I thought they'd all cleared off the base.
Oh, they're back, let me tell you. And how.
That's obvious why, isn't it? When a balloon goes up, we'll be front line.
Oh, hello, Morris.
Morris seems to think we'll be hit first. Why they would want to target us, I don't know, but there.
We're front line, that stands to reason. All the bases are here, aren't they? RAF, American.
How serious is it then, Morris?
Well, you've heard the news, haven't you? Mr. Churchill's speech. An iron curtain has come down.
The Russians are coming, and thank God I'm too old to fight. Fight!
Oh, yeah. Fine, yeah.
That won't be conventional warfare. No. Once our ground troops are overwhelmed in Germany, that's when the bombs will start flying. They are 100 times more powerful now than what hit Hiroshima. That's why we've got to be ready.
He thinks we've got a chance. We haven't. Last fight before we snuff it. Go ahead.
There's a good chance of survival if we follow the rules.
So what's the rules, Morris?
Well, there's two issues. There's heat and blast and fallout.
That's 3. Direct hit, we'll all be dead anyway.
Yes, from heat and blast.
Exactly, we'll all be dead.
And then there's fallout.
You don't die one way, you die another.
What's fallout, Morris?
That's dust sucked up from the ground. And radioactive dust, that's the worst of all. It can pass through almost any material. And it makes you very sick indeed.
Yeah, so we either get blown to smithereens, choked to death, or die in our own vomit. Cheers.
Dum dum, diddle dum dum, diddle dum dum, diddle dum dum. There was a turtle by the name of Bert, and Bert the turtle was very alert. When danger threatened him, he never got hurt. He knew just what to do. He ducked and cover, ducked and cover. He did what we all must learn to do. You and you and you and you. Duck and cover.
It was all cat and mouse, of course, or duck and cover. But to begin with, the Americans were well out in front. Thor was 100 times stronger than the bomb that dropped on Hiroshima. They could get to Moscow from any UK base in 18 minutes. But in 1957, the USSR launched Sputnik. Things would never be the same again. Project Emily was born, and Project Emily was going to take us closer to World War III than any other matter. I refer, of course, to Cuba, Bay of Pigs. But that's a little in front.
In 1955, I asked Sir William Strutt to look at the effects of nuclear fallout across the UK. And the readings weren't pretty. Nuclear bunkers were built to contain what was left of the civil service. But each one cost £1 million to build and £700,000 to fit out.
Initially, the command post for East Anglia was going to be Cambridge. And the MP for Sudbury was going to be the unfortunate candidate to be the regional commander of this post. He would have absolute power over the ragged remnants of humanity who may have survived. The nature of the beast being what it is, they moved the command post from Cambridge to Norwich. Why? Well, one bomb dropped on Cambridge would set off 100,000 fires in an area 100 miles square. Just 10 bombs dropped on the UK would cover the whole of it in a complete radioactive fallout. Consequently, the land would be fully polluted, the water would dry up through heat and evaporation, and effectively society would collapse.
It was obvious after this that cooperation between us and the Americans on nuclear development would not continue. We had to find our own defense. So the Atomic Weapons Research Establishment, AWRE, was formed at Aldermaston, with major testing facilities at Orford Ness. Aldermaston by the sea.
Of course, I knew there was something going on in this. It was a very important site that would get more important as time progressed. I know all about the blind landing experiments at Martlesham, but I was sure there was a bomb ballistic unit being built on the nest, or I was sure my sources were sure. It was all being coordinated by this AIEU, Armed Instrument Experimental Unit.
For 16 years we tested at the nest. We tested everything from drop testing to vibration testing to trigger mechanisms. The bombs were referred to as cans of tomatoes. The labs were designed to test to the highest degree. The pagodas were built to contain an explosion should a bomb go off by accident. The roof was on pillars but not fixed. In the event of a blast, it would lift off, but then fall back down on top of it and contain the explosion. Was there ever nuclear material used? I wouldn't like to say.
They had such a wonderful, colourful name, these bombs. There was Blue Danube, Blue Streak, Red Beard, Violet Club. Now that was unstable. And of course Yellow Sun, the truly first hydrogen bomb.
WE-177 was a version of the American W-47 system, but it was never what we termed single point safe. Well, that meant the conventional explosive at the core of the weapon could detonate prematurely in the event of an accident. Testing continued in earnest. Vibration was created through amplifiers, hot and cold environments through mobile trucks parked outside the labs. The ducts were covered in a layer of protective plastic coating, which proved very popular with the local rat population, leading to a few hairy moments, let me tell you.
You see, the trouble with the nest was nobody knew the full operation. Everybody knew their little bits. Boffins would never discuss their work, and even if they did, they'd only tell you about their little segments. For instance, they could be doing experiments on vibration stresses on bomb casings. They'd not had a bloody clue what was going on in the hut next door. But the chap doing the camera work, he could take reels of film of bombs raining down on the range, and his only knowledge would be the height he was sitting in and where he would set up camera. He never saw the results of his work, he didn't ask, and he didn't get.
Well, this is, nice.
Gwen, yes, I know you said you'd like to go to the pictures, but well, it's nice and quiet in here, isn't it? And you can't talk, can you? And besides, this is the only decent pub in here for miles. Peanut?
No, thank you.
Oh, right.
So, you're not involved, though, on the nest then?
Well, logistically speaking, I suppose.
Well, I'm glad they've sent somebody. The roads are going to get really clogged up with all that building work they're planning.
What do you mean, a new base?
Oh, I don't know anything about a base. There was a lot of testing went on in the war, planes always flying over. But I thought it had all wound down on the nest. They were sending all the stuff back. And now they seem to be recruiting builders again. They come in here, although they're working round the clock, building labs, they say. But labs for what? They've no idea. Anyway, I expect you know more than I do. Teaching my grandmother to suck eggs, I expect.
Well, my dear, it's amazing how often the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. I'm just here to check the access routes to the nest. Do we need another boat? Do we need to widen the roads? That sort of thing. And to see birds, etc. Bird watching.
Well, there's plenty of that round here, although if you want to do some on the nest, you'd need a pass. There's plenty of other places to enjoy.
Well, my dear, I sincerely hope that we can enjoy them together one afternoon. A man can get quite tired of solitude. Come and join me.
Oh, thank you.
He's 5'2" and he's 6'4". He fights with missiles and with spears. He's all of 31 and he's only 17. He's been a soldier for 1,000 years. He's a Catholic, a Hindu, an atheist, a Jain, a Buddhist and a Baptist and a Jew. And he knows he shouldn't kill, and he knows he always will. Kill you for me, my friend, and me for you. And he's fighting for Canada, he's fighting for France, he's fighting for the USA. And he's fighting for the Russians, and he's fighting for Japan. And he thinks we'll put an end to war this way. And he's fighting for democracy, he's fighting for the Reds. He says it's for the peace of all. He's the one who must decide who's to live and who's to die. And he never sees the writing on the wall.
Bentwaters first belonged to the RAF, long before us Yankee flyboys called it home. But in 1942, it was identified as a suitable location for a USAF airfield. Flat, remote, sparsely populated, and near the coast. 8th Air Division was looking for a home, and we zoomed in on it. At first, we called it Butley, after the village nearby, but its official title was Station 151. Work began in late 42, but was held up for a year due to other locations being priority. By the time we came back to it in 43, we had renamed it Bentwaters, after a couple of cottages that had been sited right in the middle of what became our main runway. But by late 44, its future was looking doubtful, especially since the last USAF bomb group was stationed at D-Batch. So, once construction was completed, it was placed under care and maintenance while its future was considered. It became a welcome sight to Allied airmen coming home on a wing and a prayer, as the song said. It was used by a couple of aircraft initially, one successfully and one not, mainly due to deliberately placed debris. But then the runway was cleared and Bentwaters was designated an official emergency landing ground.
Cigarette?
Where'd you get those?
Pinched them from the pub machine. Where else?
Well, can I find out?
Yes, probably. I don't care.
You don't like Carl much, do you?
Oh, right, you noticed. Well spotted.
Wish I still had my dad.
He's not my dad.
I know, but
You know he's a spy, right?
what?
He's a spy for the Russians.
How do you know?
There's this guy, keeps coming in, stranger, and he sits in the same seat, and I've seen them pass notes.
Really?
They're hidden inside the newspapers. That's why he won't have a jukebox. He's against the freedom of the West or something.
Well, I thought it was because he hated music.
I'm going to get one. Then I'll shop into the authorities.
A jukebox?
What? No, a newspaper with a hidden message inside, you idiot.
Sorry.
Do you want to go to Ipswich on Saturday? There's a dance at the Gondoliers.
What's the Gondoliers?
It's a coffee bar. Now they've got a jukebox.
I would never let you.
Want to bet? Anyway, what if I was with you?
I don't know. I'm doing overtime at the weekend.
Suit yourself.
Could do the flicks on Sunday, though.
Nah, you're alright.
There's Strangers on a Train, the new Hitchcock.
Only if you come with me to the Gondoliers.
I'll have to see about work.
There'll be Americans there from the base.
What base?
Bentwaters.
Morris says Bentwaters was abandoned. The Americans built it and didn't know what to do with it. He says they only use it for emergency landings now.
Well, there's plenty of Americans in Ipswich and more coming in every week, Jean says.
Jean. Gossip chops Jean.
Jean says that if you talk to the right ones, they take you over there for the night. And they don't just drink gin, they drink cocktails.
Cocktails? You wouldn't know a cocktail if it bit you on the bum.
Harvey Wallbangers.
Whatever.
So are you coming or what?
What? So I can get ditched for an American? Anyway, you're not old enough, and I'm not getting in trouble for you.
I can look older. I look 21 in my Judy gear, everyone says.
Who's everyone? Jean again.
Suit yourself.
I didn't say I wouldn't come.
Well, you'll have to dress as a teddy boy to match me.
I haven't got any clothes.
We'll just get you some.
From where?
Second-hand shops. It's basically old suits and stuff. Costs next to nothing.
You're not just doing this to get at Carl.
Carl is an idiot.
What is it with you and Carl?
I hate him.
No, you don't.
He said my dad left me. Just went away and left. I know there was a reason. I'm sure of it. And one day I'll find out the truth.
Well, good luck with that. In the meantime, I better be getting back to work.
Oh, so you want for Saturday?
I'll let you know.
Martin?
Deep down in Louisiana, close to New Orleans, way back up in the woods among the evergreens, there's still a log cabin made of earth and wood, where lived a country boy named Johnny B. Good, who never ever learned to read and write so well, but he could play a guitar just like a ring in a bell. Go, go! Go, Johnny, go, go! Go, Johnny, go, go! Go, Johnny, go, go! Go, Johnny, go, go!
We first arrived in Bentwaters September 1951. We didn't have great weather, but we flew over, so we were okay. But for the rest of the ground and support crew, it was an 8-day voyage across the Atlantic. 1954, we were renamed the 81st Fighter Bomb Wing, when the Sabre was gradually replaced by the Thunderstreak, and then the Voodoo. We were on Tactical Nuclear Strike Mission, which involved each aircraft carrying a single atomic weapon to a specific target, releasing it, and then returning home. Although we knew it was a one-way trip. It was likely that some of the aircraft would get taken out by atomic blast ahead of them, and even if not, we knew it was unlikely there'd be anything to go back to. The thing that struck us all when we arrived at Bentwaters was the grey skies. Visibility was poor on a large number of days. We often had to relocate to Europe or North Africa for training exercises due to fog and poor visibility.
America has been in existence for 150 years. And this is the level she has reached. Russia has existed almost 42 years. And in another 7 we will be on the same level as America. When we catch you up, in passing you by, we will wave to you. Whether you like it or not, history is on our side. We will bury you.
I have been described as a kind of a official urinal, into which government members or senior intelligence agencies stand publicly leaking in the private interest. I don't mind this description. I was always open to use it at any time, as I still am.
You will no doubt have seen, even if you have not studied, Civil Defense Handbook number 10, entitled Advising the Householder on Protection Against Nuclear Attack. In order to illustrate the contents of this handbook more graphically, the civil defense authorities have produced 7 short films based on the 7 sections that form the contents of the handbook. If the government decide that the time has come for this advice to be acted upon, these films will be shown to the public on all television networks. Their present purpose, however, is for your information. So we shall now show the 7 films as one film. Here we go. The first of these comes from the heat generated by the fireball. This may last as long as 20 seconds. The heat is so great that for some miles around the explosion it could kill people who are caught in the open, and it could burn exposed skin over a much wider area. The heat also threatens your home. By striking through unprotected windows, it would start fires across the whole area. The second danger is from blast. For some miles, buildings will be destroyed or severely damaged. Further out, buildings will suffer less severe damage as the blast effect diminishes. And for many miles beyond that, there will be light damage, such as broken windows. The third danger is from fallout. If the bomb explodes on or near the ground, dust is sucked up by the explosion and is made radioactive in the rising fireball. It rises high in the air and is then carried downwind, falling slowly to earth over an area which may be hundreds of miles long and tens of miles wide. Within this area, everything in the open would become covered with a film of radioactive dust. This fallout dust gives off radiation, rather like X-rays. Radiation cannot be seen, felt, heard, or smelt, but exposure to radiation can cause sickness and death. The radiation is at its greatest intensity during the first 2 days.
Hello, Pops. Good to see you out and about again. I'll have a pint. Are you allowed to after such a big operation?
If I'm dying pickle.
Hello, Morris. Haven't seen you for a while.
Morning, Carl.
Oh, forget the pint. I'll have a double whiskey and below the expense.
And what are you looking so pleased with yourself about, Morris?
Don't ask, Carl.
Well, Carl, I'm glad you asked. I've joined the Royal Observer Corps.
Done what?
Forewarned is forearmed, that's the ROC motto. I've just done my 6 weeks training. Then I shall be in charge of civil defence for this area.
Well, not quite in charge, eh, Morris?
Civil defence, eh? Sounds very grand. Does that mean if we all get obliterated, you'll be the one making a note of where all the bodies are buried for future posterity?
With well-organised civil defence, there's no reason why a good percentage of the population should not survive.
Oh, is that all due to the marvellous inner refuges we built for ourselves?
You should see the amount of stores he's got squirreled away.
It's all poppycock.
That's
We'll
it.
die anyway when the bombs come.
It's important to be prepared. That's the watchword. Be prepared.
Tell that to the megaton bomb that's got your name on it.
So, what is your advice, Morris?
Well, you need 14 days of water, drinking water. Mains water will be off, of course, so ideally you need it in bottles. Any water will be contaminated by radioactive dust, and you can't get rid of that by boiling. Each person needs to drink 2 pints a day, so that's 3.5 gallons each.
How about bottled beer? Will that suffice?
You also need 14 days of food, tinned of course, because the fridges will be off.
What's all this 14 days?
Well, that's the amount of time it will take for the fallout to settle. Part of my job will be to monitor levels of radioactive fallout from special bunkers.
Right. Well, I'm booking my place in a special bunker with you, Morris. It sounds like the safest place.
No. Bunkers will be reserved for members of the ROC and designated members of authority. I won't be particularly comfortable, but we'll be doing a vital job.
Doesn't sound like anywhere we're particularly comfortable. I mean, if the warmth is up, it's going to be fairly unsanitary, isn't it?
Well, yes, you'll have to use buckets as toilets, and plates will have to be washed in sand trays, because all the water will be reserved for drinking.
It all sounds preposterous to me. No one's going to be able to stay inside for 14 days. And what if you're not well?
Well, it's best to keep essential medical supplies and a first aid kit in a refuge. Serious illness will just have to take its toll.
Lovely.
It's important to know the warning signals.
Ah, you mean the loud screaming as the bomb descends rapidly?
The actual bomb explosion may be some distance away, but the effects will be felt over a wide area. And that's why we need early warning. That's where radar comes in. Because the radar will pick up the Russian bombers coming over to give us time to take action.
And how much time is that, Morris?
4 minutes!
4 minutes? Well, that's not long enough to...
Well, it depends who you're with.
It's long enough if you're prepared.
Well, how will we know?
The attack warning will be the siren sounding a rising and falling note. The fallout signal will be 3 loud bangs or whistles in quick succession, and the all clear is a long, steady note.
Oh my God, that's it! Oh, that's the attack warning!
Don't panic! Carl, where's your inner refuge?
I haven't got one!
You read the booklet for
I didn't
weeks!
think it was serious!
We've only got 4 minutes!
The Ruskies are coming, King! Come on!
I've got to get to the bunker. Get down the cellar, guy.
Don't leave us, Morris, you know everything!
Put yourself together, now. There's women and children to consider.
Where's Betty?
It's a long...
I'll be back as soon as I can. Get down the cellar.
Well, what do we need?
Take the radio and a bucket and go!
I can stay
Betty!
myself.
Wait, just leave him! Leave him, Connie, leave him!
Oh,
Where is she? Betty! Quick, quick! It's all right! All right, girl, hold on, we'll go together. Just hold on tight, girl. You're all clear. We're not dead. Oh, God.
I thought we were gonna say
Oh, so did I.
Oh.
Connie. Will you marry me?